Oh, hi, and welcome to You Haven't Seen What? A married couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. I'm Joelle.
And I'm Parry.
And we're married.
Yes, we are.
And we're going to talk about a scary movie.
Yes, scary movies, I feel like, are a real test of how a relationship is doing, how you interact with each other when watching a scary movie.
This is true. This is actually very true. There are two things that you should definitely do as a couple early on. You should go to some type of an amusement park place with video games and competitive things, and then you should also see a scary movie. It's very indicative. It's a good ploy if you're a dude. Let's be real. The girl grabs you during the scary parts, and how you react to her grabbing you and being supportive in those parts is very important to a couple dynamic.
Is it always the girl that's jumping, though? I've known some women who love to go see horror movies and enjoy them strictly for the fact that it is a horror movie, not as a ploy to jump into their boyfriend's lap.
Okay, but I'm just saying, in this instance, you can love horror movies. I actually do like a good scary movie, except for the scary movie franchises. I do like a good scary movie. I think my thing is that I am easily jumpy.
Certain things. There's a lot of things that don't scare you, but there are a few things, and in horror movies, they often, even though they're tried and true horror movie tropes, there are certain things that do get to you.
Right. And I think it's pretty much going back to like this childlike idea of the boogeyman in the closet, or this unknown thing. It's not so bad if I can actually see it and I can rationalize and reason with it and figure out how to deal with it. But if it's this unknown entity that becomes like this boogeyman, that really is what becomes an issue for me.
This also fits in with the fact that, you know, we've talked about this before. Joelle is an international criminal justice major, PhD, actually. And the idea of figuring out why things are happening in a crime, who's committing them, is part of what you like to do. But there's also sort of a fascination with being horrified by what that person can do and has done.
Oh, yeah. But everybody has that.
Oh, yeah.
That fascination.
Explains the popularity of these movies and many TV shows.
These movies, these podcasts.
Yes.
Endless amounts of CJ shows online.
Yes. Super shout out to My Favorite Murder. Fantastic podcast.
Amazing. If you haven't listened to it, you need to listen to it because they're just amazing.
Yeah.
I love them.
Not only do they tell a great murder story every week, but they talk about themselves and joke around a lot, and they're just fun to listen to.
They're my favorite. Karen and Georgia, we love you. But on to our own podcast. So this is my favorite. Oh, see, really? This is my favorite murder?
This is my favorite movie murder.
Oh, my God. Somebody help me.
See, they've gotten in your head.
It's because I listen to their podcast.
Hours of their podcast.
Yeah, whenever I'm doing crafts. So...
to go together well.
Yeah. So this is You Haven't Seen What? And this podcast is about movies that our other partner hasn't seen. And this is one of these movies that I've seen that Parry hasn't. And I pretty much said, what? Because as a movie, and he's seen so many scary movies and just so many movies of the 80s in general, but as a movie, April Fool's Day to me was so poignant in terms of my memory bank, that for him not seeing it, it was sort of crazy.
And the only memory I have of this movie is the video box. Every video store, especially those sort of crummy
video store? What's that? Asked the millennial.
Let
Google
me explain.
Blockbuster.
Used to be you had to go somewhere to get your movies. You couldn't just dial them up. Dial them up from home. How old am I?
So freaking old right now. So old.
I'm going to watch my movie on a phone line. Yes, when I would go to the store and they would have, the boxes all lined up on the shelves. I always looked at the box for April Fool's Day because the way they had the woman's hair in a noose down the back of her dress, I always thought that was such a cool image. But I never wanted to rent it. For some reason, I always, gravitate.
Chicken.
Well, I had only seen Star Wars 20 times at that point and needed to watch it another 50 or so.
Yeah. So I'll tell you that I saw it pretty early on. Like, I think I was 10.
Oh my God.
It was pretty bad. I was at a sleepover.
Of course you're at a sleepover.
And we watched this R-rated movie. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure whose sleepover it was. I'm sorry in advance. I don't remember your name.
Yes, your parents were wrong to allow this to happen. Not your parents, Joelle, the parents of the sleepover host.
Listen, let's talk about sleepovers for a second, okay? I'm going to digress. Sleepovers in the 80s and the 90s, I'm not quite sure what the fuck we were thinking, because here's what happens. You go ahead and you trust your daughter generally, or your son, your very young child, to go ahead and go over somebody's house who you kind of sort of know. Maybe because that other child has slept over at your house. And granted, the parents do drop them off. They do introduce themselves at the door. Maybe they come in for a soda. But quite honestly, you don't know the other parents. And you're trusting your child with them.
Really, as a parent, you just want a night out.
Yes, and I know that. But I wasn't that child. I was a good child. I would read books and stay quiet and pretty much keep to myself because I was an only child. I didn't have siblings. And granted, they just might want the night off, but I wasn't a horrific child who you just shoved on some other people. And I wanted to go to the sleepover. It was my friend's birthday. I am sorry, I forget your name now. But I really believe like I was 10 or 11. I don't think I was out of elementary school, and I left elementary school when I was 12. So I don't know.
So the name of the person has been overwritten with the horror of having seen this movie at 10 years old.
Yeah, it was a fucking R-rated movie. What the hell was I doing seeing an R-rated movie at like 10? And I think I was in double digits. I'm not sure I was in double digits. Now, to be fair, I don't know that the parents were up at the point in which we saw this. So I'm not sure if maybe they owned it themselves and then we saw it as a child being nosy.
That was my question is, was this rented for the party? Or was this one that they snuck out of their parents' collections? You remember people used to have like a video closet where you had all the VHS tapes, or if you were really on the loser side, you had all those beta tapes. But you had all the stacks of them, and you'd go and sneak one occasionally and watch something you weren't supposed to.
Yeah, I don't quite remember. I mean, I definitely remember the sleepover. I definitely remember the popcorn. And I think I remember watching multiple movies. Either way, this one has stuck with me for a very long time. And probably because I really believe that it's a super smart movie. And I'll qualify that a little bit later. But spoiler alert, if you have never seen this movie and want to see this movie and actually care about the ending, which you should care about the ending, you should turn off this podcast now, pause it, go see it, go rent it. I think it's on Amazon Prime Video. We'll have links to it.
It's hard to come by as a DVD, isn't it?
As a DVD, it's hard to come by. Better to see it in digital format, and we have the link on our blog, website, blog, whatever. So go ahead and watch it first. It's freaking 90 minutes of your life. That's nothing. Watch it first and then come listen to the podcast. It'll make so much more sense to you, and then I won't feel like I'm spoiling your fun of this really cheese-tastic 80s movie.
And I have to agree that the end is actually really unusual and good for the time. It's very different. I had written this off as it's going to be a slasher flick, and I'm not sure why Joelle really wants me to watch this, but okay, I'll do it. But I was really actually pleasantly surprised by where it ended up.
All right, so to go back, so I'm at the slumber party. Yes, it is a surprise at the end. I'm at the slumber party, and we watch this movie, and I'm young. So I don't have nightmares, but other girls do. And in the morning, I remember somebody needing to get picked up by their parents because they didn't sleep so well. Now, I don't think anyone ratted anybody out.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that it was like a snuck in movie. I don't think the parents would have let us see this movie. And rewatching it again, I definitely don't think the parents would have let us watch the movie.
Did they just say, I ate too much pizza too late, so I didn't sleep well?
I'm not quite sure, but people were getting picked up super early in the morning.
Like, I'm never coming back to your house for a sleepover ever.
It's a little frightening. And one part that's actually exceptionally frightening is this awesome score by Charles Bernstein. There's a whistling part. What is that? I don't know. In every scary movie, there's always something having to do with the music that is like another character in the freaking movie. And this movie has it.
And you know what? It actually makes sense in particular for you because you are so deeply tied to music and so many aspects of your life really intertwined that it makes a lot of sense. Now, of course, the music in a horror movie is absolutely critical. But I think for you, certain songs like, of course, the famous Halloween theme.
Go fuck yourself, Michael. Go fuck yourself. Wait, we're not on soundtrack yet. Finish your thought, but we're not quite there yet. And fuck Michael Myers.
I was going to say that.
Cannot fucking handle Michael Myers.
I have to do the quick side story. Halloween Horror Nights, Universal, they had a Michael Myers house. And at one point...
They didn't just have the house. They had the fucking exact house. And you're in line waiting and all they're doing is playing the fucking theme to Halloween as you're trying to get in.
And in the house, they have scenes from the first 2 Halloween movies. But there's a room toward the end which was a big mirror room with strobe lights and a dozen Michael Myers. And most of them were mannequins in different positions, but it was also actors who would leap out at you and jump out with knives. And as one jumps out at Joelle, and I'm behind her, I'm ahead of her, and she pushes me towards Michael and screams, "Your mother," at Michael Myers and takes off. So basically leaving me for Michael so that she can get the hell out of this room. And it is the only moment in our relationship where Joelle has abandoned me to my certain demise.
Don't fuck yourself. I've abandoned you. You're fucking 6'2", almost 6'3", and you're 200-ish pounds. You can go fuck yourself. You can defend yourself fine. This short chick is out. I'm out. I'm done. This is everybody fend for their fucking selves. You can run too. I didn't stop you. It's not like I pushed you to the ground out of the way. I just said, I'm out. I gotta go. Time to go now.
Look, if Freddy Krueger can't take care of Michael Myers, I certainly can't.
Time to go. So Michael Myers can go fuck himself right now. Let's even take you back up to the top. Let's start with our synopsis. And I wrote mine and it's pretty small. So I said it's like a horror version of The Big Chill, except it doesn't revolve around a funeral or death, or does it? So instead of one person dying, they all die. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, although they haven't gathered together for a funeral.
No, it's for fun. Let's go to this mansion in the woods where there's only one fairy in and one fairy out all weekend. Go fuck yourself.
And I was a little confused at the beginning, I guess because I was very distracted by Tom Wilson being there, and we'll get to that. But what was it? She invited them all to her summer house on this island. Is that or her family's summer home?
Yes. So they're all college students, and it's 8 of them. Mm-hmm. Is it 8? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 8 of them are invited to Muffy's house.
Muffy, yes.
And it's her New England home. They're all college students at Vassar, or know her, or are related to her, like her cousin.
Yeah.
Skip. And they're all going to this house to go ahead and hang out for the weekend.
Cousin, quote unquote, Skip.
Right.
We'll get to that.
Okay. So, yeah. And then they all die. Pretty much.
And of course, they have to die horribly.
Horribly.
Yeah. That's what makes a slasher flick, is the slashing.
Exactly what makes the slashing pick. So that was pretty much my synopsis for it. And my favorite quote, aka our podcast title, is nice. It's got to be better than nice. It's got to be bloody unforgettable. Thanks, Muffy. AKA Deborah Foreman.
She wasn't British, though.
Okay.
Hence the bloody.
Whatever you want.
Okay, not a workable joke.
Not a workable joke.
No, sorry.
Bloody because it's horror.
Yeah, it was
just
horrific.
Saying. So, what did you think of the movie, Parry?
I really enjoyed it once we got to the end. There were sections of it I was enjoying a lot, and then at one point I was like, okay, we need to really move on here. We're in the house and it's night and it's stormy and they're stuck in the house and we're waiting to get out while people are picked off. But that was only a short part of it. Some of the actual killings were interesting and fun. And when you finally get to the end, it is a very interesting twist on the horror movie of the era. And I really thought that Scream was the first movie that really took horror movies and played on them. Actually did that way before Scream. In fact, I have to wonder if the makers of Scream were inspired by this.
Totally inspired by this. I mean, the 80s are this idea of this ensemble cast, because really this whole cast together, what was awesome about it is that the director, Fred Walton, made them like hang out like 2 weeks before, basically. And as they were doing all these rehearsals, they were in Canada. This was filmed in BC, British Columbia. So they were in Canada and they were hanging out and really gaining that rapport. And as they were gaining that rapport, he actually saw things and would do things on the fly.
So it was kind of like the Breakfast Club of murder.
I use The Big Chill because The Big Chill actually had more people. Like The Breakfast Club only had, 6?
Yeah.
Big Chill had more.
And it's a different set of types as well.
It is a different set of types. So you've got Muffy, right, the hostess. Then you've got Nan, who is the friend from drama club, not really sort of in with the in crowd. You've got the main crowd, which is Chaz and Nikki. They go together. Then you've got Arch. He's sort of like the jock, a.k.a. Biff, a.k.a. Tom Wilson. Then you've got Muffy's cousin, Skip. And then you have the wholesome couple, Kit and Rob. Right? Oh, and Harvey. He's a little bit of an outsider, too. He's the preppy guy. He's the guy who wants to get rich quick.
Yes.
So you have sort of these, the sex couple, right? Nikki and Chaz.
Oh, well, in typical 80s horror movie form, or 70s and 80s, they all are potential sex couples. Everyone seems to be after the same thing there, and there's the potential for everyone to have it. Though surprisingly, there was less focus on it than I thought there was going to be. They didn't go for the Halloween, if you have sex, you're dead angle. Not Halloween. Friday the 13th angle that, every teenager that has sex is dead.
Well, interesting
Or
enough,
Halloween, both of them. Yeah.
Fred Walton also produced a lot of the Friday the 13th movies.
What? That makes perfect sense. Yes.
He totally did. So that's where he was sort of coming off of. He actually has When a Stranger Calls under his belt too.
Okay.
So a couple of different things. Oh, sorry. No, the producer, Frank Mancuso. My bad. The producer, Frank Mancuso, actually did Friday the 13th, Species, Stigmata. Fred Walton actually did a lot of different horror movies like When a Stranger Calls, things of that nature.
Okay.
Sorry, I got that mixed up a little bit. But this movie actually opened the weekend of April Fool's Day, March 30th, 1986.
Which is why we will be releasing this podcast
on April Fool's Day.
Exactly.
Because that's synchronicity. So it was released that weekend, and that year and early in the 80s, there were a lot of these movies that sort of had this theme.
Yeah, it was there were a lot of gimmicky releases and openings for things.
Right. And it was surrounding dates. So like Halloween, right? Friday the 13th. They even had ones like Prom Night, Graduation Day, My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, it was
Saturday the 14th.
One of my all-time I never should have watched it as a young child movies. So it sort of has that same feeling as this one for you, that although this one is much more terrifying than Saturday the 14th.
Okay. Well,
for a 10-year-old.
Maybe it is. And then they talk about sex a lot.
Yeah.
there's a lot of conversation about sex, which is okay now as an adult. But back then, I really didn't get a lot of the jokes.
Or the innuendo, like the scene where is it Harvey who's doing the arm exercises, and when he sees the half-naked one come to the window, Nick, he lets go of the arm exerciser and it goes boing and stands erect.
Yes. But she wasn't half-naked. She had a shirt on. It was just unbuttoned. It was suggestive.
Extremely suggestive. Considering we had seen her having sex the night before with her boyfriend.
Well, what was interesting about that sex scene, and I think we should actually pause it, is that there are arms and legs and contortions. I wonder if it was just the two of them in the bed? Because it almost looked like a lot of limbs.
You're right. It did look... I mean, I know her legs were way up. But it did, now that you say it, they showed it twice, and it did seem like there were a lot of arms and legs going on there. It was a lot of something
happening going on. It looked very complicated. My 41-year-old brain can't comprehend it, much less I'm sure my 10-year-old self couldn't comprehend it either.
There's a lot of Kama Sutra going on there.
There was something going on there. But it was brilliant. It really was brilliant. So there are scenes where Fred Walton actually goes in and he has seen the actors play out because they have such a good rapport and inserts them in the movie. I'll give you an example. So the scene where they're talking about the Cosmo quiz is actually inserted in after.
Really?
Yes. It was something that he had seen the characters give each other these Cosmo type quizzes, and he inserted that scene after.
So they did it when they were just hanging out together.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
And he inserted it in.
Nice, because they really, that scene actually is one of the few scenes where you see the characters behaving as friends.
Yes.
For the rest of it, they all seem to be yelling at each other about...
Well, people are dying.
Exactly. But they don't seem to be banding together to help each other. They really fragment. And I do think that that's hinted at, that they're a bunch of rich kids who are friends, but they're not really as close as they pretend that they are, or think even in some cases that they are, and they fracture really quickly.
Well, there's all those clues in the room.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
Okay. So, hold on. Hold that thought. But yeah, so this Cosmo quiz in the kitchen with the girls.
It's very natural.
It is sort of. It's sort of like, hey, we're hanging out and I'm reading Cosmo and we should go ahead and have this conversation and let's all take this quiz.
What's funny is thinking about that scene in terms of what they're talking about being very risque in terms of the sexual positions they're talking about and the sex acts.
It was risque.
Exactly.
That's why it was R-rated.
Now that's pretty low on the list of things that you would be surprised to hear about. That's like Snapchat talk.
I don't know. I don't want to think about that being Snapchat talk necessarily. I mean, we'll go ahead and we'll make it podcast talk. Okay. So one of the questions that they ask is, one thing I haven't tried, but I'm intensely curious about. A, oral sex.
Oh.
B, anal entry. C, S&M.
Dear God.
Really? D, group sex.
Mm-hmm.
E, lesbian sex. F, all of the above. So yeah, my 10-year-old mind, I'm sure, was boggled at that point. Had I even been to health class?
Well, knowing you were like taking down notes for research. I don't know what that is. I need to look that up at the library.
No, that wasn't me actually.
Or did you know what all of those were?
Nope, didn't know.
I mean, I know I did not. I can tell you I wasn't, until I was about 13, I had no idea, but I was exceedingly sheltered. And I will admit to that I was a white kid in the suburbs and I had no idea until much later what many of these things were.
I didn't know to my best friend, Paula.
Shout out to Paula.
Dad, I learned everything I know by watching her. That's why my car always gets towed when I'm with her. Just saying. She's always there whenever I get in trouble.
Always leads to trouble.
Always trouble.
Paula starts with P, that rhymes with T, and that stands for trouble. That Music Man reference, my mother would be proud.
I didn't even get that reference.
We're not even going to get into my mother and musicals this podcast, though we may have to talk about trauma and
So
Oklahoma
glad you're
someday.
crazy.
Joelle's referencing the closing song in this film, which is brilliant, but we need to get to that in the soundtrack smashes section coming later.
Aha. But I think all of this really leads us into the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
That was bad, admittedly. So
No comment.
it's fine. It's okay. So what did you think was really great about this film? Or good, I should say.
Tom Wilson.
Biff, really?
Yes. There are a lot of things I did like. Tom Wilson to me is always good, and he was in so few films. I was surprised at how un-Biff-like he was. And to me, that was proof that he actually can act. Because sometimes you'll see someone and it's like they're so perfect in that role, and then you realize, well, that's because they're really just playing themselves. But he had moments, but he never did the, make like a tree and leave kind of, although I would have loved to have seen him say that to the killer. But he had a whole different persona about him, and it was much goofier. So he was really, really enjoyable in it. I liked him a lot. But I have to say, the twist at the end, and can I give away the end at this point?
Yeah, if you're still listening after we've already told you to go fucking watch the movie, your fucking fault.
This is your own fault.
This is it.
You did it to yourself.
Last chance. Bail out.
And I can reveal this. You don't want to be the one
No,
to... Okay.
Go ahead.
The twist at the end is that no one is dead. This has all been a setup by Buffy, or is it Muffy?
Both.
Were there two of them? Or I thought she played both of them.
She did play both.
Okay. Basically, Buffy she can't afford to keep this house, the summer house, paid for, so she wants to turn it into like a bed and breakfast, but with a theme of a murder theme, an all weekend killing spree where the guests keep getting killed off. And so she's been testing it, and apparently every time she supposedly kills someone and we see their body, the body is always spotted by other people who are staying there.
The body or the head or the whatever.
Right. Oh, the heads were great. Heads floated up in the well when someone fell in, and they were sent to the well by Buffy. But basically, each person that she has supposedly killed, she brings in on the April Fool's joke. And they become they go into hiding while the rest of the couples run for their lives. Now, luckily, nobody actually thought someone was the killer and shot at them or stabbed them at any point. That would have been a real problem had that happened. But you're convinced through the whole movie that people are really dying.
Yeah, because you're seeing their fucking head.
Yeah. And in the end, it turns out they had
body floating by.
Special effects guy who was a friend who was making the heads and the bodies.
Oh, and the reason why they think that all of this is happening is at the very beginning when they're taking the ferry over, there's a boating accident.
Yes.
And they think that the ferryman, the actual operator of the ferry, is coming back and getting them as sort of a revenge for having this boating accident where his crew, where his crewman fell off the boat
and got his eye popped out, which was a disturbing sequence where his eye is actually hanging on his face, and
they're like taking him on the speedboat directly to the mainland.
But it turns out that is the makeup guy, and that was all just part of the plan. But they think it's the boatman who is also in on the whole thing. They think he's coming back and killing them as revenge because the setup is great. It's Biff, Tom Wilson, and
it's Arch
and Skip, right?
And
Arch
Skip.
And Skip are playing some game. Stretch, yeah, with a switchblade.
Yes.
And they throw it into the wooden deck of the boat and of the ferry, and they keep trying to stretch and grab it. And then at one point, Tom Wilson says, "I don't want to play anymore," and he flicks the knife back at Arch, and it looks like it stabs him in the stomach, and he falls into the water. And it turns out that was a prank, and sort of sets up the whole idea in this that you can't really tell if someone has really died or it's a prank. But that's why the boatman was in the water, was because he was helping to get Skip out of the water when he was supposedly stabbed. and then he's down helping pull the boat in. He's like, no, I'll throw the rope up from here, and then he gets crushed against the pier.
And you see his eye popping out.
Yes, graphically.
Yeah, my 10-year-old self was pretty horrified at that point.
I can imagine.
Just saying.
Scarring.
So
let's go back to talking about Blade Runner and eyes connected to...
Oh my God, fuck no.
I have to admit, I went super deep on the eyes in Blade Runner.
It's okay. We don't have to talk about it ever again. That was your good. Okay, great. So your good was that it was a good movie.
Was that the twist played perfectly on horror movies that had come before it. They set up a lot of tropes that we expected, and in the end, because we had come to assume that we knew what was happening, they were able to turn that and twist that on us and have us realize that we had been played, just like the few survivors at the end, the two that have survived the murder spree. We've been played as an audience.
That's all right. We've also been played as an audience because there is an alternate ending.
What? No.
Yeah, there is.
Like one that was actually released?
Nope. They
Really?
filmed it. Anyway, I'll get to that.
Okay.
In the production
I'm
notes.
deeply intrigued.
I know you are. I can tell, actually. It's another level to the story.
So what about your good?
So my good is that the genre of horror really needed something different, and it got something different. And this really, I don't even know if it should be categorized as horror. I don't even know if there's such a thing as a horror comedy aside from, spoofs like one that we previously mentioned in this podcast. I don't even want to mention it again because I don't want to give it any gravity. But,
or even like Saturday the 14th, where it's goofing and obviously a goof, where this did not seem like a goof.
This wasn't. It was just it was really a drama, and people died, and you sort of don't know what happened. So I guess it has to be horror. And the score, of course, freaking brilliant score by Charles Bernstein that went along with it, that really made you feel these moments and just intensified it so greatly. I think that's my most favorite part. That and this cast. This ensembles are so tough, and ensembles of 20-somethings I think are even tougher sometimes. You really need good chemistry. You need to believe that they either liked each other, they like each other, they have crushes on each other, they feel something towards each other, they feel nothing towards that person. It actually has to be a good cast of characters. And that's what they developed here. That's my ultimate good, is that they have developed this cast of characters in a very smart way in a smart movie. Because that's what it is. That end, that twist, all of those things sort of falling upon itself in the 80s, that had to be groundbreaking.
I would agree. If you know of a movie that we are missing that did it before, please let us know, because again, as this podcast is evidence of, we have not seen everything. So we would love to watch something that may have inspired that twist or played on the standard horror movie ideas before this. But to my knowledge, it's the first one I've seen that does this.
Right. And it's the first attempt by Danilo Bach at a screenplay.
Really?
Yeah. His first screenplay. And he has written Beverly Hills Cop, all three after that.
Okay.
So
that's impressive.
Kudos to him.
Yeah.
So what's your bad in this movie? Well, that's a heavy sigh.
Yeah, because I think my bad sort of disses your good. I felt like the chemistry between the characters started out well, where we felt like they were either friends or getting to know each other. But much like I mentioned earlier, I felt like about 3/4 of the way through, it fell so deeply into the standard waiting for the next person to get killed that...
Well, it was 8 of them.
Yeah, and a lot of them weren't in the film at that point anymore. But I think they sort of lost their dynamic at that point. I think they were trying so hard to have it feel like a regular horror movie to pull you in, and that may have been intentional. but I felt like there was nothing new or unique about those sequences, and that their dialogue and chemistry suffered as a result. And I think it might have been a script issue more so than an acting issue. I think they just didn't give them much to do at that point.
So, well, that's interesting. So that technically, that part that you're talking about would still be the crescendo leading up.
Up to what?
Up to the end. If they stuck with the original end, right, that would not even be midway through the movie.
How long was the original movie?
No, the original movie is supposed to be another 30 minutes.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. So I feel like it feels like it's supposed to be towards the end because it's supposed to be towards the end in the new movie.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be towards the end in the original movie.
So did test audiences not like the original and they tacked on a new ending?
Yes.
Interesting.
So the ending is not really the end. Like, the ending is not the end. Where they're all celebrating, like, hey, I've played this crazy joke on you and I wanted to do it for like a bed and breakfast type thing. Yeah. That part is true. But that last part where Nan cuts her throat and then it's still a joke, they filmed that 4 months after the wrap of production.
Just that one little scene?
Just that one little scene, because that there was supposed to be a continuation.
A sequel?
No, there's supposed to be 30 minutes after like that wrap party sort of happens.
And what was that? You keep teasing it. What was that original ending?
I mean, I don't know a lot about it. So here's what I know. There was a novelization written by Jeff Ronan, which really sort of explains it a little bit more. So if you can find a copy of it and you want to read it, don't worry, I've ordered ours already to go ahead and look at this alternate ending. So essentially what happens is that the friends go back and then punk Muffy.
Interesting. Okay.
But the punking goes wrong. And Skip, who's really Muffy's brother.
Yes.
Twin brother.
Which we do find that out in the final cut of it that we've all seen, is that Skip, cousin, as I said earlier, is her brother.
Right. So the interesting part is that Skip, played by Griffin O'Neill, is actually goes and kills Muffy. He like goes off the rails, and instead of it being a joke, he kills Muffy, and then one of them, I think it's Rob, saves Muffy.
Wow.
There's a twist on a twist on a twist.
And that is actually what I wanted to see. It's what I was expecting to happen.
For somebody to die.
Is that after they do the sequence where, hey, it's all a joke and no one has died, that little tacked on scene that you had where someone comes in and slices Muffy's throat. Who is it?
Nan.
Nan comes in and slices her throat, but she's
Leah
also...
Pinsett.
Okay. And it's also a joke. That I wanted to see that really be a murder. And I figured that they would just do a one murder scene after that to kind of shock you and then end it as a opening a door to potential sequel or just giving you a final thrill. But to go on the way that the original was planned, it would have been really cool.
The issue was, and Fred Walton actually talks about this in like a YouTube video when they reshow the movie, I think in either 2016 or 2017.
Yeah.
He talks about it saying that it didn't go over well with audiences and that they wanted to end on a high. And they felt like, haha, I got you, April Fools, was much more of a high. And then the whole Nan part coming in to kill Muffy afterwards was tacked on sort of because at the party you see Nan and she's sort of in the corner still. She's upset.
She looks unhappy. I noticed that. Yeah.
She's still upset because part of the secrets that were all let out in sort of helping to build up this whole idea of somebody messing with these college kids is that she had an abortion and that there's a recording of a baby crying. So she thought that was her friend, and Muffy only would have known about that.
Right.
So she was like, why is Muffy calling me out on this? And why are we hearing this tape? And how horrifying. So Nan doesn't see anything funny in being a part of these clues or jokes that were left around.
And the clues were all supposed to relate to something personal
right.
about the characters to start sowing the seeds of discontent and starting that fracturing that I was talking about, so that
It was intentional.
they're lacking trust in each other. But a lot of them were never really explained.
No, a lot of them weren't explained. And I'm wondering, I don't know what the alternate ending really has in store, truthfully, or what they edited out, or what we maybe don't know. So I'm hoping that when I get the novelization, I'll sort of be able to piece in those things.
My guess is that each of them becomes a suspect in the real murders because they might want to kill her for revealing this, like Harv, something about a car crash, and they don't really wrap up why he's getting these newspaper.
No, but they just go back and they prank her. They just, it's not having to do with anything.
Okay.
Skip goes off the rails and tries to kill her because he wants the inheritance, because he's the brother.
Oh, right.
And he's mad that he doesn't have the inheritance.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I garnered anyway. Thanks everybody who's like written about it. So many blogs.
Do you think, or have you found in any of your research anything more about the music box? Not the music box, the Jack in the Box. Why would her parents give her a Jack in the Box that has like an alien in it that pops out?
I don't know. So the Jack in the Box re-reference was also then tacked on.
Where someone gives it to her as a gift.
So it was just supposed to be like, oh, this is a practical joke thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess it was tacked on again. So we don't really know a lot about that, but we're way off course. So your bad was that
I felt like
wanted a murder.
Yes, but I also wanted more from those characters at that point. And that set of sequences where they're running from the killer, it started to feel like Teenage Clue, where they just were like, who done it with the gun or the noose or the knife? And also it started to take on sort of a Scooby-Doo-ish quality as well, where they're doing everything that they shouldn't be doing. Like going in the boathouse. Never go in the boathouse. That just is a rule.
No, but don't you think it's because we know it now, never go in the boathouse? Isn't that like part of what Scream's premise is that we know from watching all these horror movies there's shit you're not supposed to do. Now, I will say one thing. Why in the fuck would you split up? That is dumb.
It is, but again, I guess we have to remember that if they were playing on the standard horror movie tropes, that splitting up and going in the boathouse are things you never do. So of course you're going to have them do it so that people can scream at the movie screen, "Don't do that." And then of course they get killed and we go, "See, told you." But again, I guess the good of that is that that lulls you into thinking that it is just your standard horror movie. So it may not be so bad after all.
It's not bad at all. It's genius. It's genius in so many different ways. And
used loosely, but
and I almost lost sleep again last night after we had rewatched it.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I woke up once like startled because I thought somebody was coming after me.
It was a cat.
It wasn't a cat. And the light was still on. So no, it wasn't that. But bad is that once you've watched it, you already know what's happening. So the suspense is hard for you to go ahead and get in again. Although I did. Now maybe it just takes, 30 years of not watching it to go ahead and say, all right, I'll check it out. But it's the good and the bad of it all. So that's why it was great to actually be able to share it with somebody who hasn't seen it so that I could watch their reaction to it. And your reaction at the end where you're like, she did what? Like, she set it all up? I don't understand.
And I had to pause and wait, so nobody's really dead?
No one's dead.
Which was shocking to me, that no one had actually died and all of that.
No one died. So then we're at the ugly part.
It's pretty ugly that Tom Wilson dies and then doesn't die. No. Let's see. No, what? I had an ugly, but I didn't actually write it down.
You didn't write it down?
No.
It's like we're doing a podcast. You're so unprofessional. While you're waiting for your ugly, I'm going to go ahead and say mine, okay?
But that's out of order.
I don't give a damn. So the ugly part that I sort of... And it's really about a lot of 80s movies in general. There's a lot of this whole idea of slut shaming and this whole gratuitous, we have to show, you know, the woman's breasts or have the outline or the wet shirt. Deborah Goodrich was such a good sport about a lot of it because she does. She's the one with the wet shirt. She's the one stuck at the bottom of the well. That was on a studio set, but do you know that to make it that murky, they colored it? The crew would put out their cigarette butts in it.
Ew.
And she ended up getting an ear infection after she'd shot that scene.
The water looked really gross.
It was gross.
I was actually impressed that she didn't play the standard slut character type. She actually seemed to be smarter than they would have made her in a lot of films that are similar to this. She almost seems to be
sexually confident, yet has a little bit of insecurity. There were layers.
It also seemed like as a teen of the time, she is, or an early 20-something of the time, is sort of figuring out her life, not knowing what to do, and is exploring sexually, and is confident enough to do that and doesn't care that people think bad things about her because she's not concerned. And she actually seemed like one of the more interesting characters that had been written for this. But God, the bathing suit in the beginning, what they did to her with that shot angle was not cool.
Really? You had to put it out?
That we shouldn't even give detail. Just on the ferry, the way they have angled the shot in the bathing suit, nothing to the imagination. And again, I'm sure that was not accidental.
Probably not. Deborah Goodrich has really great chemistry with Clayton Rohner, and that's because they have done Just One of the Guys prior to that, another movie which Parry hasn't seen.
I know, it is shocking to me.
Awful. But they went ahead and they actually got the parts together because of the chemistry that they had already had. So that's amazing in and of itself. And on to production notes, not with Parry, but with Joe. So there's this alternate ending, this 30-minute segment that was cut out, and it's crazy, right? This happens. And apparently they even show pictures of this alternate ending on the boxes, like the DVD boxes. No one catches it, essentially, or maybe it's meant to sort of be out there. It's very interesting. And like I said, the novelization by Jeff Ronan after the fact, if you can find a copy, it's all in there. But I do have another crazy aside. I don't even think that you're ready for this.
I'm certainly not ready for this.
Total crazy aside. So Griffin O'Neill plays Skip, which is, Muffy's cousin at first, but then really twin brother. The year that this was released, he too had a boating accident that was fatal. Not himself. But he killed Giancarlo Coppola, Francis Ford Coppola's son.
Oh, no.
In a boating accident.
Whoa.
So it's sort of like there's a boating accident at the beginning of April Fool's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this crazy boating accident the same year it was released. So the next year after production.
Yeah.
And kills Coppola's son. And then he was convicted of negligently operating a boat. He did a couple of days jail time, but not many. And he was working on Francis Ford Coppola's film Gardens of Stone while this happened. And
he was an actor in it?
Was an actor in it. So yeah, like this whole awful thing. And then I'm really bad. I dig into people's past, and I'm sorry, Griffin O'Neill. It's all out there, and you've given so many awesome interviews about your depression and your addiction and your family sort of having that issue and it being rampant. But that's a lot of what it was, is depression and addiction. And, he talks about rehab and that he's been through rehab like 3 times before he went through high school. And unfortunately, that's part of being a famous kid's son and his mother having that issue and all of those pieces. But yeah, that's this really crazy backstory that sort of happens.
That's pretty wild. I had no idea. And that's not in just the sort of general basic research that that I looked up. So I imagine that's
No,
buried
I
a little
dug.
deeper. Mm-hmm.
I dug a lot, and then I started reading all the interviews. It's just sad, Griffin O'Neill is Tatum O'Neill's brother
Oh, okay.
and Ryan O'Neill's son,
Mm-hmm.
and how he doesn't speak to Ryan O'Neill, and right now he's not speaking to Tatum. I believe Griffin is sober right now.
It sounds like he's been trying to turn these things into a positive by talking to people about going to get help when they're feeling depressed, or when they're going through depression or dealing with those issues.
Depression and addiction, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So really how his struggle is an everyday thing, and how everybody needs to seek that help,
Okay.
and that it's sort of never too late to
Yeah.
have that help or to keep trying, really, because it's a process. But yeah, it was just this craziness of the symmetry of boating accidents.
Yeah, I had never heard that. I have to admit, I didn't even know Coppola had a son who had been killed.
Well, he was young.
How old
He was
was
in
he?
his 20s.
Yeah.
He was
Okay.
super young.
Yeah, very.
And can you imagine he was working on the film with him? That's probably how they were together and
Yeah.
just enjoying each other. They're just 20-year-olds hanging out on a boat. So do you have any production notes with Parry that are maybe not so awfully horrific?
I don't have any real production notes. You did the serious research on this one. I do have a story though about one of the actors, and there's most of the actors in this seem to go on to other roles or had been in other roles that you remember them, but you don't remember why exactly. Like Muffy Buffy was in
Deborah Foreman.
Yes, in Real Genius, which was a movie I loved as a kid, and so she had a fun role in that. She was also in Valley Girl, which is one I didn't see until much, much later, but she's the lead in that and was fantastic. Folks like J.W. Baker, who plays Harvey, the thing I remember him from is Shag. He was like a...
Oh, shoot, you're right.
Yeah, he was
Dang.
like the big lug that always wants to fight, and he was great in that, though. He was fantastic.
I totally forgot. You're so right.
And Rob, Ken Olant, he was in a ton of things. Mainly I remember him from Because I Was That Kid who got super into Navy aircraft and ships after seeing Top Gun. And he was in a TV show called Super Carrier, which was a real Top Gun ripoff that was awful. But he was a character in that. So that the parts of my brain where I should be able to remember, say, calculus, I can remember that he was a character in Super Carrier. Let's see. Clayton Rohner, who has been in a lot of things, but there is I don't know how remembered this show is. It was a show called G versus E, Good versus Evil. And he was the lead in that. And a number of years after that show, I was working at a store in Los Angeles, and he came in and was asking me questions about computers, and it didn't click until I was looking him up. But he was asking me all these questions about, I was selling Apple computers, and he was asking me a bunch of questions, and he gets a call while we're talking, and it must be his agent, because he's like, oh, I didn't get that role, huh? Went to Joe Palminteri, Joey Pants. And a lot of people will know him from things like The Matrix as Cypher, but he had just lost a role to the guy and was calling him Joey Pants. And then we went back to talking about computers, but that's my Clayton Rohner story.
That's a pretty good Clayton Rohner story.
Yeah, he was cool.
Random.
And he also is in a fun new show called Ozark. He is he's like the poppy grower up on the hilltop.
Crap, you're right.
Yeah, he looks a lot different now. In this, he looks like he's trying to be sort of low rent Rob Lowe, and with the spiky hair and the sunglasses. But he has an awesome video camera. The video camera that has the shoulder strap, and they taped it and go in the camera. It was in a box you strapped over your shoulder, which was a high-end model at the time. So it shows that he had some money, that this character has some money. But I know this isn't a production note necessarily, but I have to say Tom Wilson. If you've never met Tom Wilson, he's a really cool guy, But I recommend just going online and looking up what Tom Wilson, Biff from Back to the Future, is what most people know him as. But what he's doing, what he's done in the years since then, is pretty extraordinary. He's not only a stand-up comic, but he's an artist as well. He does all these cool pop art paintings of toys, like old 50s toys and things. And he's done some cool screen printing and has a really neat video about how he had become this pop culture footnote and how he's moved past that into doing all these other things. So he's actually really cool. And he has a great song he does called Questions, and it's about the questions people ask him. I highly recommend that on YouTube.
Also, Deborah Goodrich, who is actually now Deborah Goodrich Royce, they have a philanthropy, and they've taken over like a theater, the Avon Theater in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, nice.
Where they showed the 30th anniversary of April Fool's Day.
Awesome.
And there was a panel there with her, Deborah Foreman, Amy Steele, and Leah Pinsent. And we're actually going to link that to our website so you guys can check out the Q&A with them afterwards, 30 years later when they meet up. But she's done some amazing things too, besides starring in, Just One of the Guys and having a pretty great 80s career herself. She's, giving back and doing a lot of philanthropy work as well.
Nice. Did I say Chaz Palminteri? I meant Joe Pantoliano is who I meant that Clayton Rohner was talking about Joey Pants. I may have gotten that wrong.
I wasn't paying attention.
Oh, well,
Okay.
Not so unusual.
There we go.
Not so unusual when I go off on a deep tangent.
Nope. So I do have a couple more production notes.
Yeah.
That I sort of forgot and skipped, but I went over my notes while you were talking, which is probably why I didn't hear you.
That's cool.
When you said Joey Pants. I mean, I heard you say Joey Pants, but I didn't hear what you were referencing.
Joey Pants.
The secret to any good marriage couple, you listen to about 2 out of the 3 words that somebody is saying. If you listen to all the words, it will drive you crazy when you're with a verbose partner. But if you listen to 66.6%, it's much more manageable.
I think that works for you because you're very good at filling in the gaps. You're like software. You can make that logical leap between those two places. You can interpolate. I don't think all people can do that.
Interpolate?
Yes.
GRE word.
And I don't think all people can do that. And I think that could lead to some real disasters in relationships.
I'm saying you can do it and it's fine.
Really? Is that what you do to me all the time?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I know you're fine with it.
I never knew. Therefore, you're doing it right.
Yeah, that's how I'm not bored of all of the stories that you keep retelling.
I never told the Joey Pants story before.
Yes, you have.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, shit. I am my dad.
You are your dad. Just like how I'm my dad. It's just part of life.
Love you, Dad.
Love you, Dad, too. Which is why I don't listen to every single word that you say. The art of the tune-out, I learned it from my dad.
Huh?
Exactly.
Yes.
So other production notes, as we have our marriage life aired literally. Other production notes, the budget for this movie was $5 million roughly, and it did about 13 at the box office. So, hey, not too bad by horror movie standards.
Yeah.
IMDb ratings, not so hot, like a 6.2. Rotten Tomatoes definitely wasn't a critical hit. Rotten Tomatoes gives it about a 38, but Google users give it an 81.
I think the low rating is based on Tom Wilson's shorts that he wears at one point, which looks like boxers sticking out from underneath shorts. I think that's where the low ratings probably came from.
No, I think they're confusing it with the new re-release that I heard was a freaking disaster.
Is it the same? Is it a remake?
So it's like a remake, but it's not a remake with the same twist. It's like the same principle.
Just a slasher movie?
Sadly, Frank Mancuso was also involved with this, and it went straight to DVD. That's really what tells you all you need to know.
So it doesn't
that.
have the twist at the end?
I don't think so.
Then that's ridiculous. It's unnecessary, pointless.
Obviously, everybody else thought so, too.
And if it doesn't have Tom Wilson, then it's pointless. Especially when Tom Wilson puts that spear on the stick and goes all Lord of the Flies in the woods.
And then dies with the snakes. Oh, there's like a snake thing too.
Oh yeah, the snake is like jumping at.
No, I have a snake
there's a story
note.
around
there's
the
a story
snake.
around the snake note.
Okay.
But apparently the snake handler, you know, like any other good snake handler, he doesn't bring one snake. He brings multiple snakes.
Got the backup snake, yeah.
He's got the backup snakes.
All right.
Plural. So he decides that he's on the set for the day and he's staying at the same motel. They all call it a motel. I don't know. A
motel.
Holiday Inn.
There
No,
you go.
it's not all the same. So the cast says that they all stayed at this motel.
Mm-hmm.
And the snake handler was staying in the same motel as the rest of the cast.
Okay. Bad idea.
Well, okay. Well, what was a bad idea is that I guess he didn't let the housekeeping not to go inside. And apparently there were snakes in the tub because that's where he kept them all.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know what that really looks like or how do you even open that door. I don't know, but housekeeping went in and they were not amused so that he had to be asked to leave from the hotel. Motel, sorry.
Well, this is how you get your own trailer. Is you piss off the housekeeping staff so that you get thrown out and you know they have to get a trailer for you.
Yeah, something like that.
So this was definitely not Indiana Jones's bathroom.
Right. And I don't know that snake was supposed to leap. I don't think Fred Walton really knew what the snake handler had in mind. So that whole scene that we do have with Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson, please feel free to verify this.
Well, the way it's lashing out, I mean, was that really Tom Wilson suspended from the rope swinging past it?
Yo, a lot of them did their own shit.
It's that kind of low budget, huh?
Yeah. Hello.
When you're trying to break in, I guess you're
Goodrich
willing.
was in that damn well.
Yeah, I guess that's true. She's actually
with the
fallen
cigarette
into...
butts. Fuck that.
Those were stunt butts.
No, it was not. She got an ear infection.
Well, if that was really Tom Wilson, you know, if I had met him after this, I would have totally asked if that was him. Because that snake seemed to be lashing pretty close to him.
I know.
I think he could have cut him with his collar. Because don't they say at one point he only has two expressions, collar up, collar down? Which I had to rewind. I didn't quite... Was that... They were talking about his character, right? And he, like, keeps flipping his collar up very 80s style throughout. So he could have just, you know, cut the snake with his collar.
No. You're cheesier than the movie. Stop.
You know, one thing I thought was actually really cool, and I don't know how it had been used prior to this, was when they do the testimonials on the video. It almost was sort of Blair Witch-like, where the film starts with a clip of video.
No, it's not Blair Witch-like. Blair Witch used it from It.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that I don't know if it was the first time that technique was used, but I don't remember a usage before that where people are talking on video and we're seeing the video clips before we actually meet the people.
Right.
And they only do a couple in the movie, but that first introduction for Nikki is done on video. And it's great. It's a really fun little clip, but I think it was one of the first times it had been done.
I would agree with you. I just love Deborah Goodrich. I mean, I love the Deborahs. The Deborahs in this movie really freaking make it for me. They're it for me in this movie. Besides the soundtrack, which is a good segue. Hey, soundtrack smashes. We've already mentioned that Charles Bernstein wrote the score for this movie, but he also wrote the score for Nightmare on Elm Street. So apparently he's really good at being haunting. I don't know. My 10-year-old brain really can't ever wrap around it.
It's very creepy and atmospheric. And
yes, thank you.
Yeah,
those words are good.
I think it really set a tone. And again, any good horror movie needs that. And I felt like there was that whistling effect in it that almost made you think that it felt like someone watching from the woods, you know, it just gives this extra little something is lurking sound to it.
Yeah. And the soundtrack is crazy hard to find. So here's the deal about that. You have to go ahead and find it on vinyl. On CD, it was released, but not until like 2015 on
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy.
Does it have a big cult following, this film?
So it does, because when it went to video, and then it was also really shown late at night. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really where a lot of it lies, is that, you know, it's that early VHS era.
Yeah.
And, you know, pre-HBO, or was HBO around? HBO, I think, was around.
Yeah.
It's just that that super weird cult following afterwards. The actors all remark that they should have done a better job negotiating residuals.
Well, I told you, I always saw it in the video store. It was the one constant that I seem to remember in every crappy video store I ever went into. So I don't know what kind of distribution deal they had, or, you know, how they really got that out there, but it was very ubiquitous to video stores throughout the 80s and even into the 90s.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you've seen it and you know what happens at the end, but you want your friend to see it because what they don't know what happens in the end.
Right.
Right. So it's definitely that really great movie for that. Oh, there's one other piece regarding the soundtrack. There are literally 2 other songs in there. Mama Told Me Not to Come.
Yeah, which we know that one. That's a classic.
Right. And then there's this awesome piece by Jerry Whitman, and it's called Too Bad You're Crazy. And it's the catchiest song ever.
She's been singing it all day.
I have been singing it all day. I also played it once today, and sort of when I play it, it's over and it's stuck in my head. It's also...
Even Zanzibar could not reset her brain.
No, it couldn't. Neither Flashdance. So when I'm really invested, I'm really invested. And this time I'm really invested. And I am so invested, in fact, that I made sure to go ahead and post the link up to the song. It's actually embedded in our website as well.
And it's super fun. It is this crazy song about
you're crazy.
Which sounds like it's out of the 19 teens somewhere. It sounds like something you would have to crank up your old RCA Victrola to play it on. Not that it's crackly or low quality, but it's the sound of the singer's voice. It almost sounds like a remake. And it could be. We haven't yet found any reference to it anywhere.
I don't think.
So it sounds like someone was just doing it in the style of of that type of song, much like Postmodern Jukebox will do modern songs, 21st century songs in old school style, which they're awesome, by the way, if you haven't heard them. It's just a really fun, goofy song that sort of sums up the whole joke of the movie, that it's an April Fool's prank.
A little bit. It sort of says like, hey, this chick is really nutso. All right. And we're moving on. It sort of gives you that. It sort of wraps it up very nicely. And I don't remember hearing it. My 10-year-old self doesn't remember hearing it anyway. So when I heard it for the first time, it really stuck. And I wanted to stick with you. Not to diminish what Charles Bernstein brought with his score at all. Never, ever, ever, never.
It's totally different.
It's just completely...
Because, the score sets the spooky, whereas this song ends us on hey, it was all a joke. This was actually fun. But it's interesting that they kind of use that as an excuse to show us a lot of gore and killing, and that it seems like in the end it's like, oh, it makes it all okay if we just say, just kidding, April Fools, that no one's really dead, but we still got to see all this murder and blood.
Yes, that's why I tested out this way versus the other way. Because if you had too much murder, you had murder, and then I was like, hey, just a joke, and then more murder.
Right.
And people weren't happy about that. Yeah. This way, everyone leaves, and it's sort of like, oh, hey, just kidding.
Right. It somehow seems to make it okay.
So if you really feel like there's something that we need to see out there, this super cult film that you have not heard us yet talk about, or you think that we need to see, don't worry. We're making a list. We're checking it twice. We keep coming up with new ones. I keep having to reformat the list.
Yep.
And I think we're onto 200 or 300 movies.
We've got 3 years worth of movies. So.
Probably. So don't worry. We have a list. And if you want to add your awesome cult favorite classics to that list, that's great too.
Now, we also keep cutting each other off. I never let you finish talking about the CD. You were saying that it only came out in 2015 as a special release, and
that shit is hard to find. That shit is super hard to find. So if you find that CD somewhere, you should probably get it. It was released, I want to say that the company or the record company did a special edition monthly club, and you had to be a member.
Was it like the Columbia House?
It wasn't Columbia
10
House.
for a penny.
It wasn't. No, that was just a trick to fuck up your credit.
Yeah, I had a
Sorry,
roommate
Columbia
who would
House.
order it under phony names and then claim that person had never lived there.
Yeah, right. So here we go. Oh gosh, I mean that's so old that we're talking about Columbia House.
I loved Columbia House, at least until
course you
they
did.
started coming after me to pay.
Exactly. It's just a trick to mess up your credit because you're young and you're like 10 for a penny. That's awesome.
That's
and
why
then you don't listen to your parents. Your parents are like, that's a trick. And then you order them all.
But it's in Spin magazine. It's got to be real.
Okay, tangential right now. So the CD was part of a membership, and you had to order it and be on this membership. And there were only so many released. I think that's really how it worked. If that's not how it worked, I'm sorry. That's what I garnered. So
This is a real collector's item then. So
the CD is a collector's item. The vinyl's not too shabby either. I mean, the vinyl is ranging, if you can get it on the low end for like very good, it's ranging $30, $40 on the low end.
That's pretty good.
And pretty much like 80 and up on the higher end mint sort of spectrum.
Okay.
The CD really ranges. So if somebody doesn't know what they've got, and now they do because of this podcast, if somebody doesn't know what they've got, they'll sell it for $30. If they know what they've got, they'll sell it from anywhere from $150 to $300.
Somebody out there is saying, and I just took it to Goodwill.
I hope not. That Goodwill is definitely looking it up, and they will be selling it for at least $150, or they should be.
More likely, my parents threw that out when I was at school.
No, but it's just it was just released.
Oh,
2015.
yeah.
So
You're right.
you have time to salvage it.
So they don't have to live through what I lived through with my Star Wars toys.
Never gonna get over it.
Never.
Ever. I know. You have some of them. Just take a breath. It's gonna be fine. So I guess the whole reason why I wanted to show you this movie was because you had never seen it. I thought that was so crazy to me because it was such a different twist on a horror movie. I always like movies that feel smart at the end or that make you think throughout the movie. So like Clue is one of those. And I think this comes very close to being, like you said, a teenage Clue. It's all in one house. It's all encapsulating. They're all there and they're all trying to figure out, who the killer is.
It made me think about why Tom Wilson has to put his collar up when he's about to masturbate. At one point, he is, looking at his magazines, and the collar goes up. I mean, is that the position he has to get in?
Maybe you can ask him next time.
Was that an acting choice, or was that direction?
And on this note, Tom Wilson, if you'd like to go ahead and answer that question, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. And also feel free to go ahead and shameless plug right here. Check out and subscribe to our website at youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com. There we go. Wow, that's right.
I do have to say, my bad was when horror.
Oh my god!
I'm sneaking my bad in at the last minute.
Yeah, it's the ugly.
My ugly.
You
Sorry,
told you're bad.
I'm sneaking my ugly in.
Oh my god!
My ugly is Harv's line when he says she calls him a farm boy, and he says, "I'd really like to plow your field." That was pretty ugly.
That's your ugly?
That's ugly.
That's your ugly?
Very.
Thanks, you guys, so much for tuning in to You Haven't Seen What. We hope that you tune in with us next week when we keep debating all these crucial points regarding 80s movies.
Is Tom Wilson in it?
So remember,
be kind.
rewind.
Bye.